we are, for some of you, you're like, does the Sermon on the Mount ever end? It does. It ends today. Today we will finish our sermon series that we've had on the Sermon on the Mount, and we go back in Jesus again for those that are, if you're just joining us, and we've been on this journey, and we started when Jesus basically said, hey, I'm about to start this sermon, I'm going to go find my people. He goes and gets his disciples, and he starts off by saying, basically, repent, for the kingdom of heaven is near. And he starts on this sermon, which the Sermon on the Mount is the longest sermon. Be glad I only go to about 11:45 or 11:50 sometimes. Maybe I get to 12. Jesus went from chapter 5 to chapter 7. And so, longest sermon that Jesus ever recorded, and he challenged and he taught basically, hey, here's what we expect, here's what we want from you, here's what our Creator, our Heavenly Father, has created for us to be, and how we should look, and our mindset should be that we are kingdom people who have a king that we learn to be like, to love, and to pass the love that He's given us on to other people. And we talked last week that the gate to get to Him, the gate to get to heaven, the gate that allows us that grace and that love and that mercy and that eternal home, the amazing grace, all those things, those promises that are available, is a narrow gate, but once we go through it, the pasture is unlimited. The freedom is there, and there's so much that comes with knowing Jesus. And so we come here today in Matthew chapter 7, and again, if you notice song number 337 in the order of service, you know where we're talking. You know where we're going. Matthew chapter 7 and beginning in verse 24. And as we go to look at this, and it's a familiar, and I'm excited. We're starting another series next week. I'm looking forward to that. But we're going to, if you've grown up in church, which you don't, I'm never going to take it from you, but you go to church, this is a familiar story. This is a familiar passage. This is a familiar, you probably already know, okay, he's preaching on foundation, know Jesus, the rock, or the sand, and he can do his sermon in about 3 minutes, we can start eating. So, yeah. And so, we know that. But today, we're going to look at this passage maybe a little bit differently, maybe a different mindset on what we need to look at when it comes to our lives, when it comes to the storms that do come in our life. And so we've got it set. We good? All right, so we're going to hit play, and I want you to watch this video.
No, I put a screen there.
You got it, Dave?
We had it, and then it was like, it's not on the screen there.
Technical difficulties. Okay. All right. Good. No, not happening.
Here.
It was working.
Let me give it to the younger kid. I don't know.
Because I had to have it. There it goes.
We're almost there.
There.
Oh.
Cows, for example, sense that a storm is coming, and they start running in the opposite direction of the storm. Buffalo do the exact opposite. They sense that very same storm coming, and they run directly into the direction of the storm. Now, when the cow runs away from the storm, what ends up happening is it's running along with the storm. It ends up staying in that storm far longer than it ever needed to. Versus the buffalo running directly into the storm. At first, it's very difficult, very loud, very scary, but in a very short period of time, they're through the storm. I've been both the cow and the buffalo, and I learned that all it did was prolong my suffering. I very quickly became the buffalo, and the first time it was one of the most difficult things I'd ever done. But once I did it and realized that you get through it so much quicker, and on the other end is a bright season of your life, then when adversity arises, you sprint towards the opportunity to face things that at one time you feared ever facing.
Oh, there you go. All right, so you get a choice today. Are you going to be a buffalo or a cow? Now, I was thinking all the same when you say holy cow or don't have a cow was another thing that was said sometimes. But when you start looking at it, you get a choice to be a buffalo or a cow. And just like he said, for some of us, we've probably been buffalo, but many times we want to be the cow. You know, the storm, I've always said, you know, the storm comes in the west, moves east. If it grows in the east and moves the other way, you better head for the hills. Is that right? Does that sound pretty right? So as we start looking and thinking about which one do we want to be? Do we want to be a buffalo or do we want to be a cow? I told you, don't get offended if I call you buffaloes or cows. Matthew chapter 7, beginning verse 24. Therefore, everyone who hears these words of mine and puts them into practice is like a wise man who built his house on the rock. The rain came down, the streams rose, and the winds blew and beat against that house. Yet it did not fall, because it had its foundation on the rock. But everyone who hears these words of mine and does not put them into practice is like a foolish man who built his house on the sand. The rain came down, the streams rose, and the winds blew and beat against that house. And it fell with a great crash. And so as we go to look at this passage, and again, it's a very familiar passage that we've seen. A couple of things. First of all, we are all building a house. If you're in this room right now and you, whether saved, not saved, you name it, as Abraham said to Sarah, if you're well along in years or young, every single one of you in this room, elementary, junior high, retired, high school, college, you fill it in. We're building a house. Just like this baby boy that came a little early, his house is starting. Every single one of us have a house. When we get put on this planet, on this earth, you're building a house. And in that process, you've got a choice. Well, you don't have a choice. Well, I guess you do. You got to have a foundation. And then what you do with that house along the way is your call. And so we're all building it, and we talk about it. You hear me say we talk about it in the Define Room. You leave a legacy. You leave a legacy. You leave every one of us, whether like I saw last night, Audrey Pearl at 4 years old, fought cancer, did all the things, left a legacy. Every single one of us leave behind and leave a mark. And you get to choose what kind of legacy that you live. And it starts understanding you are building that house. And then the same deal is that we are all building a house, and we get a choice on how we build that house. Now, sometimes things come into our lives. We'll get to those in a minute. Sometimes things come into our lives and it changes our progression. Have you ever seen somebody that they're building a house and you can tell that they didn't go out and get the home loan? They're building it as they go. And they start and they build the foundation because they had the money to pour the foundation. Then they had the money and they framed it up. Then they waited. Then they made a little more money. They added more to it. Wait a little more, had a little more money. They started adding to it. We get to do those things. And so we all build a house. But in the same breath, we all have storms. None of us in here are exempt from storms. And then we get the choice, are we buffalo or are we cows? And so we all have storms. Some storms, there are all kinds of storms. Some storms happen. And they just happen. It's kind of like having a great day and all of a sudden, sun is out, everything's fine. Weatherman doesn't have it anywhere near that's going to rain. All of a sudden, storm pops up, it rains. It had nothing to do with it, just happened. Sometimes we have those storms that happen in our lives, and we get the report. We don't understand why they happen. And unfortunately, sometimes we have storms in our lives that we create because of the choices we make, the decisions we do. If I go 85 or 95 from here back to Abilene and get pulled over and I get a ticket for X, man, that wasn't my fault. Officer, I'm not real sure. I think you're do you not know who I am? That's my fault. That storm, that ticket, that insurance going up, that defensive driving, all those things, that is my fault. And sometimes storms come and it is our fault. But even no matter the storm that comes, we've got a choice on how we handle it. The other thing that I thought that was neat about these storms and about this story, and then again, you heard me say I wrote this down. Feel free, you're more than welcome to write it down too. But it says, puts them into practice as like a wise man who built his house on the rock. And then it says in verse 25, the rain came down, the streams rose, the wind blew, beat against the house. Sometimes the storms that we have in our lives, everything's in it. Sometimes those storms that come, you get the doctor's report, you get the fill in the blank, whatever, and it's got everything. It's got rain, it's got hail, it's got sleet, some snow comes in somehow, I don't know why, and it all hits us. But you and I have a choice on how we handle those storms. If you start to run away from them, it's like the cow. I'm not seeing a cow run, and I'm not saying I could outrun it. They're not very fast. All it does is prolong that storm, prolongs the struggle. Because when we try to run from it, you know what it does? It comes with us. That storm will run with us, and you get tired. You get frustrated. You start blaming everybody else. It's somebody else's fault. And a lot of times when we start running away from the storm or trying to run with it, you know who we normally run away from? The one who can take care of you, and that's God. We run away. And then we start wondering, what do I do? How do I get through this? And God said, I've been here. I'm the one that can help you through this. I'm the one that can break the addiction. I'm the one that can stop X. I'm the one. And I love how he said the buffalo run into the storm. You know what stinks about storms? Sometimes they hurt. I'll never forget. Pretty good. Almost 3 sections into the sermon without a sports reference. Me and my buddy Kyle McVeigh were playing golf. And everything was fine. Everything was fine. We get to hole 8. We see a little bit of a cloud, but we're like, shouldn't be a problem. Weather says it should be fine. We'll be done with golf way before the storm hits. And so Kyle and I were in the golf cart, and we get done with hole 8, which is over there. And the clubhouse is over there. And all of a sudden, all hell comes loose. It starts hailing. So Kyle and I, we have options. We can try to play dodgeball. We can try to park underneath a tree in a non-covered golf cart, and maybe it works out for us. There's no trees at Diamondback Golf Course except mesquite, and we were not near them. So here's what we do. Kyle's driving. We look like, you remember Dumb and Dumber on the moped? Kyle and I are in his golf cart like this. driving as fast as we can, getting pelted by hell. Praise Jesus, it was pea size and not golf balls. Last thing I wanted to do is feel like I was on the driving range and God hit me. But we had an option. And what was funny, because it was safe, you know what we did the whole way? We laughed. And I think part of that reason we laughed is not because getting hit by hailstones was fun. We were in it together, and we were telling us, oh my gosh, we probably said things pastor shouldn't say. I don't know. But we took off, and we finally got to the end, and we got parked, and we got in, and we just started. But that's how you handle storm. Now, don't get me wrong. I'm not saying a storm that hits you is funny. I'm not saying when things hit the fan that it's funny. What I am saying is you and I have a choice on how we handle that storm. We can either be a cow or a buffalo. And Jesus is saying, I am the one that can help you through this storm. I'm the one, because it's going to happen. It doesn't say if, it doesn't say anything. It says, therefore, everything built his house on the rock. Is the rain comes, the storm is coming. And what I love about this story, and I'm going to give credit to Matt Chandler because he would always say this. Same neighborhood, same storm. Foundation was the difference. Foundation was the difference. It's not only how we handle the storm when it comes, but it's also when. Now, going back to me and Kyle, or Kyle and I, for those English teachers, if I said it right. We probably should have left a little sooner. Because if we leave a little sooner, we get to watch the hail fall, not feel the hail fall. And for us, sometimes when that storm comes, or when we handle it, when we decide to run into it, or when we run away from it, is important on how. Because if you know you're in a struggle and you sense that fading away from God, I say all the time, when people walk away from the Lord, it's not a huge step. It's normally a small one. And then another small one. And then another small one. And then the steps get bigger. And the steps get bigger. And then the next thing you know, it's like being thrown off a tube in a lake. You're here and you're wondering, how did the boat get way over there? See, if you're in that struggle right now, why wait till the storm gets bigger? Why wait to keep running away from him instead of saying, you know what? I'm coming back to you. How and when is important. And so as we wrap up, I'm going to read it one more time and then we'll close. Therefore, everyone who hears these words of mine and puts them into practice is like a wise man who built his house on the rock. The rain came down, the streams rose, and the winds blew, and beat against that house. Yet it did not fall, because it had its foundation on the rock. But everyone who hears these words of mine and does not put them into practice is like a foolish man who built his house on sand. The rain came down, streams rose, the winds blew and beat against that house, and it fell with a great crash. No, it's not probably the best day to have pastor appreciation to ask if you were a buffalo or a cow sermon. But I ask it this: what is your foundation built on? That's the answer, because Jesus said, I've just given you all these things. Love your neighbor. Pray for your enemies. Do all these things. I've given you the keys. I've told you where the gate is. All of it. And he's basically saying, and you and I are the same boat. You have a choice. Who do you build your foundation on? And I'm going to ask you this right now. Who is your foundation built on? Because if the answer is not the rock, if the answer is not Jesus, you will not survive the storm. Because it says it did not fall. The sand, it crashed. And I can assure you, your Debbie right, and Ritosa? Deborah. She can tell you what it looks like when your foundation goes away in a flood. Looks gross. It's hard to rebuild. It's hard to restart. So question number one, what, and now because it's not to take it from a rock and a sand, who is your foundation on? Because if it's not the rock, it's the enemy. And the enemy will push you over. If you are on the rock, you know you've trusted him as Savior and Lord. Are you letting things get in your way to shift your foundation? Are you letting things get in your way to nudge your foundation? My other thing is, are you in a storm right now? Because if you are, you have two choices. Run away, be a cow, hope it doesn't get you, or be a buffalo and go with the Lion of Judah and attack that storm. That's my question. One, foundation, what's it on? Because if it's not the rock in Jesus, your home in glory has not been built. Your home in glory is not available. It only becomes available when you trust Jesus as Savior. I'm going to ask Pat to come and play. And if I were to ask you, have you been a cow before when the storms hit? You'd raise your hand. Because if you've never been a cow, write a book. Because that means nothing bothers you. But if you have been a cow, you can change that. Because I loved how this guy said, I've been both, but once I started becoming a buffalo, I could take the scars. I could take the pain. Because I understood I'm going to get on the other side of it. And that's what God does for us when that storm hits. He takes us to the other side and gets us through. So as Pat plays, as you stand, cow or buffalo, you make the call.